Good afternoon and welcome to the live broadcast of Asteroid Day here at the RTL Group in Luxembourg. My name is Sabinije from Gaffke.
And my name is Lisa Burke, and together, along with Brian Cox, we have the pleasure of hosting this live Asteroid Day event. Brian will lead all of the panel discussions, and with that, we want to wish you a very happy Asteroid Day together. And just following on from that, from Kiritimati to Hawaii.
We'll be covering Asteroid Day all over the world because this is truly a global event. We have thousands of events going on celebrating Asteroid Day today, and we also have the pleasure to touch down and have Skype calls with some of them during today.
And why 30th of June? Well, it marks the anniversary of the Earth's largest recorded asteroid impact, which was in 1908, the Tunguska event in Siberia. Now, the first Asteroid Day live broadcast was in 2015. And by 2016 already, the United Nations had recognized it as a day of global awareness and importance for education around the world. We want to make sure we can enthuse people about asteroids, increase our knowledge, protect the planet from dangerous impacts, facilitate future exploration of what we can actually gain from asteroids, and just the general love of space and science.
And Asteroid Day is, of course, for all, from experts to beginners. However, this year, we're looking at bridging the generation gap. We want to ignite the curiosity of the young minds, make them interested and curious about coming the next generation of space crusaders, scientists, astronomers, and astronauts, who knows? And that's why it's so exciting that we have a studio filled with a lot of children. But they're not any random children. These are children who are diving into experimenting about everything that is space-related, and they're also working on different projects that we'll hear more about during the day.
And we also have many people sitting in our panel. Live scientists, we have astrophysicists, astronauts themselves, asteroid lovers, and even amateur enthusiasts all around the world, which we will talk throughout the next few hours, in fact, with you. And we want you to be involved as well. With Twitter, you can hashtag Asteroid Day Live, hashtag Asteroid Day 2018, and send us your questions, any information you have about asteroids, because with asteroids, everybody can get involved.
Absolutely. And with us today, we have another co-host who was with us last year, Gianluca Masi, who'll be keeping that extra eye on the movements happening out there with the asteroids. Now, Gianluca is an Italian astrophysicist. He has a PhD in astronomy, and he's also a science commentator. So anything that might happen today regarding to any of the asteroids out there, Gianluca is our man. And with that, over to you, Gianluca.
Thank you very much, Sabinije. It's such a big privilege for me to be here again as part of Asteroid Day Live. And as Sabinije said, we are ready to look up with the help of those people doing this for a job. We will connect via Skype with the most important surveys, just probing the sky every clear night to to discover those close approaching objects. This will be really fun, but also we will breathe the air of science and discovery, because those guys will be looking for asteroids while we will be talking with them. And I hope that the sky will be clear there so that we can really learn from them what we are doing, what they are doing, what is the typical job they do. And these surveys are very important for us because they make possible for the human being to discover and understand the asteroid population. And this is a very important topic, sharing asteroids live. And for me, running the Virtual Telescope project has been a big and happy duty over the last 10 years and more, just to show with people worldwide every close approaching object, because it is a nice opportunity to share the wonders of these objects. But a lot of things are happening, so I'm very happy to go back to Lisa.
Thank you very much, Gianluca. And with that, I would like to introduce our next guest, who will also be here during the day, Joseph Rodesch. You might actually know Joseph because you're called Mr. Science here in Luxembourg, and you're also a well-known local science communicator. Now, Joseph is today joined by 400 kids, as I spoke about in the intro, who are all interested in space, space development, becoming scientists and so forth. And we have a few of them here and more to come. So I leave the word to you, Joseph.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, hello world and Asteroid asteroid lovers. So my name is Rodesch, as she said, and I'm the host of a local science TV program called Mr. Science. As you can see, this is my working clothes. And I'm going to present you a project today that is called Living and Working in Space, and where a lot of school classes from all over Luxembourg participated, and they had really fabulous ideas how they imagine the living and working in space. And the science education program in Luxembourg is very important in science, but also towards asteroids, because Luxembourg is very interested in asteroids. And when you talk about asteroids to pupils, you need experiments, and you cannot go up to space. So I found one experiment that I particularly find interesting, that you can show to kids to give them the fascination for science. I have two kinds of sand here. This one is a normal sand, and you know the reaction with water, so it sticks together. And here I have space sand. It's not from space, but it behaves very differently, so that's why you call it like this. And this is, in fact, hydrophobic sand, so it is water repellent. And it is very fascinating. So science is about observing things and discovering very new special things. And here you see, for example, the silverish layer that seems a little bit special. So, and the sand doesn't get wet. And then I have another. This is also space sand underwater. And when I take it out, you see that it is not wet at all. So, and this might be a property of some sand that you find in asteroids. So, and that could be a good experiment to start talking about science. I hand over now to Brian Cox, who is a physics teacher at the University of Manchester and also famous for his BBC documentaries.
Thank you, and welcome to Asteroid Day Live. Over the next 6 hours or so, I'm going to host, I think, 12 panels, actually, of experts talking about the whole field of asteroid detection, deflection and exploitation. We thought we'd start, though, with a panel of the founders and, I suppose, driving forces would be the right thing to say behind Asteroid Day. Danica, Remy, Schweickart, Mark, Boslough, Dorin, Prunariu and George Schmit. So I want to start with Danica. You are a co-founder of Asteroid Day, president of the B612 Foundation. So why does Asteroid Day exist?
Well, Asteroid Day exists because one of our other co-founders, Greg Richters, had made a film called 51 Degrees North. And he asked Brian May, one of our other co-founders, whether or not he would do the musical score for his film. And Brian introduced Greg to me, and that started a conversation about the challenge of educating the world about asteroids. And Greg took his film to something called Starmus and presented it and debuted it there, and was in conversation with Boslough and some other folks, including Stephen Hawkins. And the conversation came up as, like, we really should have a day of education and awareness. And so Greg came back inspired and energized after that, the debut of his film, his conversation. And Greg and I started talking and thought, well, okay, let's just do it. Like, what would it look like? And so we took inspiration from Earth Day, generally independently organized events that are happening all around the world. There's a general set of messages that are delivered by Earth Day that people then get to interpret in their countries, their cities, and their schools. And then the other thing that we looked at was that we needed really a call to action. And we tried to learn from the Union for Concerned Scientists, who, issued their manifesto, and then it took, quite a few years for a action list to be developed out of it. So we said, okay, let's figure out what we would like the world to do in the next decade. And that got me to enlist the other co-founder, Rusty Schweickart. And I said, well, what would we do, Rusty? Because you've been thinking about this for, at that point, 12 years. And that started really a conversation about what would the call to action be when you ask all of humanity to start thinking about asteroids. And so that led to the creation of what is called the 100X. And that's been our essentially call to action. And so Rusty could probably talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, Rusty, most people probably know you from Apollo 9, but you are primarily concerned now with asteroid impacts, asteroid exploitation though as well, and mining and so on. So I suppose it's one of those threats and opportunities that people don't think about as much as, for example, other threats, climate change and so on. Why do you, in particular, focus on this, on asteroids?
Well, as Danica said, I was working on and with about asteroids for about 10 years before we came to this point. We primarily came to it from the standpoint of defending life on Earth from asteroid impacts by deflecting them. But of course, as you say, Brian, asteroids are interesting for lots of reasons: science and resource exploitation and just exploration in general in the future. So asteroids are very interesting objects. But what we learned when we looked at them from the planetary defense point of view was that obviously you have to know where they are before you can defend yourself against one that might be headed toward Earth. You have to be able to predict impacts ahead of time. And to know that, you got to find them. And one of the things that those of us working in the field realized was that with current technology, we're really close to the limit of our detectability of these objects. And at this point, we've really only detected about 1% of the total population that, if it were to hit Earth, any of them to hit Earth, could actually kill people on the ground. I mean, really do serious damage. So we really have to step up our discovery of asteroids if we're going to, in the end, protect life on Earth from potential impacts. So one of the things we wanted to do, as Danica approached me with the idea of what would we want to do, would be to enlist people all around the world who begin to realize this is both a threat and opportunity, but you have to know where they are. And so we came up with the idea of, look, if we really use advanced technology, we can increase our discovery rate by a factor of 100. At the rate we're finding them today, it would take us 1,000 years before we found 90% of them. Well,
by which time one of them may have visited.
One or more may have hit by then, right? So we wanted to increase rapidly, and we figured that's a great action for the general public of the world to get behind. So we established a thing called the 100X Declaration, which I encourage anybody who's watching to go onto the Asteroid Day website and sign the 100X Declaration. We already have hundreds of thousands of people who have signed it. The other thing, which and here I'm going to be introducing Mark, because we said, well, look, another thing that's going to happen as soon as we discover asteroids which have a potential threat to life on Earth, a potential impact, is that many people in the press, the tabloid press in particular, are really interested in selling newspapers, and so they write these glaring headlines which are really way off the mark. I mean, I hate to use the term, but it's fake news, right? So we decided we really needed to have Asteroid Day serve as a group of experts who could say, this is what we really know about this and what we don't know. And so
I think one of the other things that we realized when Greg and I were talking about it, and what I had learned in the work that I've been doing with the B612 Foundation, is that there are all these amazing scientists around the world doing this work, amazing educators in universities, at planetariums, in schools and their astronomy clubs. And so the idea was that we wanted to have a platform for all of those people to stand up in their community and talk about their asteroid work. So whether it's exploration, whether it's science, understanding the origins of life, understanding where the water came from on our Earth, or planetary defense, we really wanted to shine a spotlight on them. And so, today we have, over 2,000 events happening all around the world that are completely independently organized. And that was really the impetus of needing to have both the 100X, but also Asteroid Day, because these scientists and educators are amazing.
Well, and Rusty also mentioned the expert panel. And Mark, I know you're one of the founders of the expert panel. So could you elaborate a bit on what Rusty said about, I suppose, well, the way you put it was correcting the headlines of the tabloid press, but it's a big job.
I've always been very interested in science communication.
Hi Gregory, this is Bilal from Asteroid Day. Can you hear me?
in that effort in the past regarding climate change.
It's perfect. You go live in about 7 minutes.
Controversial, but not so controversial from a scientific perspective. But I had been concerned about some of these glaring headlines and clickbait.
Yes, you will see the picture from the studio.
On the web that say the Earth is going to end. There's some catastrophic thing that's going to happen in the near future, and this seems to happen with regularity. So when Asteroid Day came along and Rusty proposed the Asteroid Day expert panel, I was immediately involved. I think the panel consisted of the two of us to begin with. And then we recruited, because Asteroid Day was so international, we wanted the constitution of the panel to represent that. So we recruited scientists with very diverse areas of expertise from all over the world. And you can go online and look at the panel. There's a link from the Asteroid Day website to the Asteroid Day expert panel. And if you have a question, we're happy to answer it. And if you see some of this clickbait news and it concerns you, you can write to us and we will answer the question.
It's quite a delicate balance, I suppose, isn't it? Because at one point we are saying there is a potential threat here that needs to be addressed, but at the other end of the spectrum, it can't become science fiction because then people ignore it.
And oftentimes it is when you see, headlines in media that aren't so reputable. They're really interested in getting you to click, and most of those, turn out to be, like Rusty said, fake news, exaggerations or fake news. So we want, part of the foundation of the Asteroid Day expert panel, part of the charter really is to make sure that everything that comes out of Asteroid Day is scientifically accurate and defensible.
Yeah. I wanted to come to Dorin because we're talking about spreading Asteroid Day. You've been instrumental in involving the UN. I should say, by the way, I said that Rusty was Apollo 9. You're a Soyuz 40, Salyut 6. We're going to talk about that later on, actually. I know you said to me in the car that you flew on the last of the real Soyuz, not the real Soyuz, the old Soyuz, shall we say, the ones without all the computers. We'll get to that. But in terms of spreading this message and getting it into the UN, how did you go about that?
Actually, we had experts. We deal with asteroids. We spread information at a certain level, but we needed real international global recognition of this effort. And the only big institutions, the largest one in the world, to promote, to recognize, and to let all other countries in the world to recognize these things is the United Nations. So I started work with Rusty in 2005 in the Near Earth Objects working group of the Association, Committee on Near Earth Objects of the Association of Space Explorers. And it happened that in 2008 I was elected as a chairman of the UN Committee on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space, starting my job in 2010 to 2012. And we succeeded in 2009 to submit the report of our association, a very deep, well-done report, very well fundamented, to the United Nations as a working document for the Working Group on Near Earth Objects of the United Nations. So such way we had a large consultation with all member states. So this committee numbers now about 90 member states, and the full UN has 193 member states now. And in the framework of the committee, all interested countries took part in the debates. And finally, it resulted in organizing two international institutions, an International Asteroid Warning Network that has as a main goal the discovery, the monitoring, the characterization, physical characterization of the asteroids, and promoting this information at the level of the UN and of the member states. And of course, acknowledging about the dangerous asteroids, about the hazardous ones. The other institution which was created in 2014 is the Space Mission Planning Advisory Group. It gathers the most important institutions, national institutions in the world, space agencies, that could build technologies to deflect the orbit of the asteroids. And such way, we just started work. And with regard to the Asteroid Day, we just noticed that it's missing one element in all this global promotion of the asteroid, the information of the people, the information of the citizens. They pay the taxes, they pay for building
Gregory, go live in 2 minutes.
They pay for defending against the asteroids, but they have to know what they do and what we do and how the United Nations promote all these things at a global level. And the Asteroid Day just came right in time. In 2016, I proposed to this committee of the United Nations to ask the General Assembly of the UN to recognize the Asteroid Day as a global event. And in the fall of 2016, we had these recognitions, and now we organize this Asteroid Day globally, and we have broadcast all over the world for 24 hours, 48 hours, and promote science, technology, education, to let the asteroid Day to be known by anyone.
Yeah, the other component we're going to hear about a lot today is the Asteroid Foundation. George, you are heavily involved in the Asteroid Foundation, so what is that?
Well, the Asteroid Foundation is a Luxembourg non-profit organization founded about a year ago with the goal to promote education, awareness, knowledge about asteroids. Now, you may wonder how this came about to happen here in Luxembourg.
1 minute, Gregory, 1 minute.
Very much related to the Luxembourg government Space Resources Initiative. And so I was based in the San Francisco Bay Area between 2009 and 2016 as the government's Consul General, and one of my roles was to look ahead. What are the technology trends? What's going on? And because I had to do a little bit with the genesis of the Luxembourg SES way back in the 80s, I thought, well, what's new in space? What's going to happen in space in the future? And of course, I was drawn to the new frontiers of space exploration, the next step. And so I got involved with resources. How do we use resources that are in space to reach the next frontier, to do more exploration beyond perhaps even our solar system. So the conclusion was pretty simple. We need to use the resources in space for future space exploration. So we started designing, while I was still in the Bay Area, this new Space Resources Initiative. And of course, there was those pillars about research and about funding and about creating new companies here in Luxembourg for this purpose. But I always insisted that it was very important to also promote education and awareness. Asteroids is not a daily subject around our dinner tables, so we need to inform the public at large what it is about, what these asteroids may be good for, what their threats are. And so while I was still in the Bay Area, I got introduced to Danica. And she said, wouldn't it be great to have Asteroid Day from Luxembourg in a live show? And that was the birth of the Asteroid Foundation, which we founded in last year to do the first show and other events, of course, that we're trying to promote in the area of education, awareness and science.
Okay, well, thank you all for now. We're going to discuss all these subjects throughout the next 6 hours, actually. But for now, over to Gianluca.